Now, you also
Now, okay, I see it now. Sometimes when we hear the yes, it does not resonate on the headphone, but I see it on the transcript. Yes.
Now, Mr. Witness, you also said that you recall that from time to time, Mr. Sang would ask people to live in harmony and maintain peace, isn't it?
Yes, I explained that sometimes he will speak like that.
And you confirm that you've seen that he has asked that all tribes live peacefully and in harmony for the posterity of Kenya in this audio, isn't it? Now, I will read what we just heard in Kalenjin into the court record, which is to this effect. When this happened, Mr. President, I'm reading from page 253, witness, that is page 1, paragraph 3, starting with the words, when this happened.
Please keep an eye on the transcript. There's something that's not working well. There are sometimes witnesses' answer is not reflected.
Yes, Mr. President, I will endeavor to do that.
At line 12, for example, I think in the middle, after you finished with a question, isn't it? The witness did respond. And then you continued, quote, now I will read what we heard. But the witness's answer is not on record. That's what I mean.
I see that, Mr. President. Witness, I'd asked you that could you confirm that you have seen that Mr. Sang asked that all tribes live peacefully and in harmony for the posterity of Kenya in the audio? And did you answer yes, Mr. Witness?
Yes.
Now, Witness, I'll read what you just heard in Kalenjin, which you confirm this is a fair translation of, that this is what Mr. Sang said. When this happened, as you heard, dear listeners, everybody tried to distance themselves from the act.
Remember to pace yourself slowly, please.
Both the people in government and others not in government. The government itself is divided in the middle on this issue, or rather, people's opinions are divided on the action that was taken. Some people within government have condemned the act, saying it is not proper, while others have supported the action, saying it is okay. If you follow this up, dear listeners, even though someone is minister, he or she is a minister of the government of Kenya, not a minister of his tribe, nor an individual minister. Before the president appoints an individual and decides that he can work with that individual, he considers an individual with Kenya's interest at heart. He does not consider a person's tribal affiliation or where he hails from. The reason I'm saying this, dear listeners, is so that we can discuss this issue. I would like us to ponder deeply on this issue that has the potential to bring hostility or enmity in Kenya. Though God gave us a beautiful country and gave us good soils and rain and peaceful coexistence, whereby we are happy living together in this country, belonging to this country, a country that is the envy of others who wish they would get even a mere acre or a small portion of this country to place the head. For this is the country of Kenya, loved by all, a country, dear listeners, of people who love others. However, when this event occurred, there were some who knew and others who did not. When you try to look closely, dear listener, you find that there is something when you peek within that leaves you wondering what's within here. And It is this, dear listeners, that I want us to discuss and help one another to find ways to avoid such, and thus be able to take care of this nation. For this country does not belong to the Kalenjin, nor to the Kikuyu, nor to the Luya, nor to the Luo, nor to the Kamba alone. It does not belong to any religion. This country belongs to anyone whose ID is inscribed Kenyan citizen. Therefore, it is the right of every citizen to work together and forge national unity so that we are able to move forward and take care of our country, and not with anger, revenge, or malice, or tribalism. Mr. Witness, I would like to play a little more of that audio to you, but even before I do that, do you recall having listened to Mr. Sang's program on the 6th of March 2006? Is it one of the days when you had Mr. Sang?
Yes, around that time of the month.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness. I would like to play from timestamp 0439 to 909.
Yondit anan ukabila. Siamwa guni ostoikyo ko yitista ngalechu ko sukumwoe biik ngalek chokero ole nyolu man kebwat oeng agene kele emonep Kenya get.
Mr. Witness, I just want to be sure you can follow. Have you found the place in the translation? That would be paragraph 3, starting with the words, the reason behind my utterances. Are you there, Mr. Witness?
Yes.
Okay, just follow it.
Tipte yono tugul asemuta ko mabitye marget. Amuat ka ngoro ko chitugul igaso ngomwa ngolyo no kabijit keba kele Rwanda ak Burundi. Kilongeri beme nyomat kewege olimba Rwanda, ongeri beme nyomat kebe Burundi. Koi kiribe ne emoni simagitakchige age boisionik cheuchige emetab Rwanda. Kiribe ne emoni nyonet kostoikyo kotko mutai komabit boriet nebo boruryondit. Agoi ne rahani kemuchi kele mwaet ngololutik an yautik kemuchi kotakchi biik boisionik cheu choto bo Rwanda anan ko Burundi. Ne che promoten ne che chere biik kobwat ak kwaibo yautik chekere chito bororiet age komachito. Agoi kora komeche kiro kostoikyo kele boruryondit anan ngemwa kele ache kolenjin kwa mfano. Ko ne negonu kibagenge nenyoneti ako ne chi nyolu keribege kora ing kibagenge asokobit yikiribe kibagenge nebo kolenjin kerib kibagenge nebo emetab Kenya. Kumache kolenjin kityo chi tugul ko biik chemi emetab Kenya kabileshek 42 ko kilyojin asokonget kabilet age tugul kurib imandab emet akoribe imandanywa. Amu melen ngele kabila ko kilengot kele aje kolenjin ongebe kipkotinak ongebe boisionik yo kibagenge ko kiegu kabila achicha. Kino mwoe koi yekimite ko kibagenge nebo kolenjin ko ne kora nekemuchi kerib eng kibagenge ak kerib emetab Kenya kibagenge nebo emet. Amu nga kichenge kandoinatet ako chenge chi tugul kandoinatet ko eng let ibou biik chemi Kenya mebou kolenjin ichegei. Ko eng let ibou biik tugul chemi Kenya mebou kokoek ichegei. Anan ko mebou lemek anan ko kapsome ichegei achicha ibou emet tugul ngotie ku president nebo emoni. Ko kiripto yano kibagenge ini kotab kolenjin asokobit yekimi kerib.
Mr. Witness, I have stopped at timestamp 6:50. I would like to read in English what you just heard and request you to confirm before we proceed. And this is what Mr. Sanga said. The reason behind my utterances, dear listeners, is that as this news develops, people say things that one ought to think twice about and determine how we can all live together in this nation of Kenya so as to avoid impending violence. This is because every time an issue that appears difficult, you soon begin to hear people say Rwanda and Burundi, that we should take care of our country so that it does not go the Rwanda or Burundi way. So, how are we going to take care of this country so that tomorrow we do not go Rwanda way or the way that were done in Rwanda? How are we going to take care of this country? Dear listeners, so that ethnic violence does not erupt. Furthermore, what kind of talk or discussion could possibly lead people to do the kind of things that were done in Rwanda and Burundi? What is it that promotes or pushes individuals to see others that are not of their tribe as not being human? Furthermore, we need to think about this, listeners, that tribalism, when we look at ourselves as Kalenjin, for instance, what is it that fosters our unity as a community, and what should we caution ourselves against, so that even as we foster our unity as Kalenjin, we also foster the unity of Kenyan nation. And this is not for the Kalenjin community alone, but for all the 42 tribes of this nation. What can be done so that every tribe upholds the rights of the country rights as well as their own individual community rights? Because tribalism is not about Kalenjin deciding to be united in undertaking their activities. No, that's not tribalism. As such, while we unite as Kalenjin community, what is it that we can do so that we can at the same time sustain the country's unity? This is because as though we are seeking leadership, and everyone is seeking leadership, you are seeking to lead the whole nation, not the Kalenjin alone. At the end of the day, you will rule over all people in the nation, not the Kikuyu alone, or the Luya, or the Luo only. No, you will rule over the whole country if you are elected as the country's president. Mr. Witness, is that a fair translation of what you have heard so far?
Yes.
Mr. President, I will request to correct page 83, line 20. The word affected there is afraid. It should be avert any impending violence. Witness, I'll play timestamp 650 to 904.
Avert, you said A-V-E-R-T?
Yes, Mr. President.
Any impending violence. Oh, all right. I'm sure eventually it will be captured. Before we proceed, let's see. Witness, you testified earlier that yes, sometimes Mr. Sang, according to your testimony, would be broadcasting messages of peace and coexistence, but at other times it would be broadcasting, according to you, inciting messages. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
And counsel for Mr. Sang has now asked you about the broadcast of the 6th of March, 2006. Did you say you listened to it at the time?
You had said yes, Mr. President.
I said around in the month of March, I listened to Gas FM, but I don't remember exactly 6th of March.
All right. The point would be with this message Mr. Kiginkatwa has been playing, would it have been something you heard on CAS FM from Mr. Sang?
No.
Continue, Mr. Kiginkatwa.
Now I'll play the last bit of the audio, Mr. Witness, in relation to this timestamp 650 to 904.
Kibagenge ne nyonet ku iribe chi tugul kibagenge na boryen wai ketau kora ke kushiko ngalekab emet amu yait kasarta ne ngololi ministayat akomwa kole sikibokyi stationishek kyo ak kyo kole ko nguno kikopchei kopcheune stationishek anan chebo kabarastoik kopcheune kutit akikepcheune kora chamainik ikose chito komwoe kole standard ak sijui ak ne anan komwoe station kole no koba kanu kuno koba LDP kuno koba kapkogo kuno koba DP ne ngalechu konyo agere ane ale ngalek kyo chemeche kengalale asikobit kiribegei amu mani ko yekimwoe ko bara emoni eng katiba komi imanda ak chomjinet eng chitugul komeny emet ola tugul eng emoni eng imandanyi yekaal kityo melen chonyike nyokotepche chito akonyotebe emetab chi kobate ngot kwal ak yaldoji kundo imandab chito komengis eng ola tugul lakini yekitesta ngalek cheu chutok chekaketoi kepcheune kotokotebeke chito kole hai kakokikere amu bo kanu kokikere amu bo chitab kolenjin koni kikikere atkinye neu ninyonet kai keker amu bo kolenjin anan keker amu bo kanu anan keker amu bo ne kutuguk choto chemeche kerib somutai kuma kontoyet eng kibagenge nebo emetab Kenya amu kit nenyolu kerib mising ko emetab Kenya kibagenge nebo emet national unity singop kebendi bororiet ko kakerib nebo emet amu yemomi emet eng koronindo komelen tepche kibagenge itab bororiet age tugul eng imandanyi ak kororonindo kora nyolu kerib national unity kibagenge nebo emet asikeweke nyikerib kibagenge nebo bororiet koi keitei ano boisiechu tugul boisionichu tugul keitei ano inye ak ane asikerib emoni koboto kora kandoik choto chekikilewen ing ngalalet kakateb ale ne promoteni ne nekonu mutai ketokchige boriet ko ne nekemuchi keribege simotokyinek boriet akameche inai ile kibagenge ko kimnon nebo emet ak nebo bororiet.
Witness, I would request you to confirm if this is what you heard in Kalenjin from Mr. Sang. So how shall we maintain this unity, House of Kalenjin, so that even as we seek to maintain our own unity as a community, just as other communities do, we also work towards national unity. For if and when a time comes that a minister defends the attack on a particular media station, we find that station are divided along tribal and party lines, which is why you find an individual mentioning that Standard or some other or that station belongs to KANU, that belongs to LDP, that is for the Kikuyu, that is for the DP. What is this? Our community. I find this an important point of discussion so that we can be able to take care for, in truth, this country is large and the Constitution allows each and every individual to live in any part of the country with full rights as long as that individual has purchased the place, not someone just coming and settling in someone else's place. But in the case of a willing buyer and seller, then one has the right to live in any place. But if we continue with this trend, then there are those that are bound to ask, so it, into bracket station, was closed because it belongs to KANU? Was it closed as ours was the other time because it belongs to Kalenjin, or because it belonged to KANU or some other? So we need to be vigilant so that such issues do not dent the Kenya's unity. National unity is most paramount, so that as we move to have community unity, we first have to achieve national unity. This is because if the country is not well, then no community will live well with its rights. It is important that we foster national unity so that we can now go back and foster community unity. So how can we, you and I, accomplish all this and nurture this country, including the leaders that we elected through dialogue? I had earlier asked, what is it that can push us towards violence, as well as what is it that we can do to avoid going towards that path? And keep in mind that unity is the pillar of the country and the community. Witness, is that a fair translation of what you had in Kalenjin?
Yes.
Mr. President, may I correct page 86, line 6, where the following words are missing? Maintain our own unity as a community. Now, witness, I thought you had earlier said that you had this audio, but you say you listened to Sang generally in the period of March 2006, but do not remember specifically having heard him broadcast this, what I've just played to you.
Yes.
However, Mr. Witness, could you confirm that in line with what you said, that you used to hear Mr. Sang preach that people should live in harmony and should coexist, that this was the general tone and the tendency of his message?
You will need to rephrase. Your question is that what you've just played will be consistent with the witness's testimony about those times when Mr. Sang would preach or broadcast messages of peace and unity and national coexistence. Isn't that your question?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you very much.
Yes, I confirm that this is a time when he could speak, preaching peace and coexistence.
And that this will be an example of that sort of
Yes.
broadcast. Is that
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yes, Your Honor. And before you continue, I would like also to look at paragraph 3, line 4.
What page?
0255.
All right, page 3. Okay.
Not someone just coming and settling in someone else's place. And if you hear that in Kalenjin, and what people actually believe about the Kikuyu, to have just come to parts of Eldoret when just having brought by Kenyatta when he took during independence, most of the Kikuyu were brought to Rift Valley and parts of Eldoret by Kenyatta, and most people believe that their land, the Kalenjin believe that their land was simply given out by Kenyatta at that time, and that is why at most times during campaigns and during during elections, when people are looking for votes from the Kalenjin, they will give examples, and you will see that it is also genesis of why we have tribal clashes, of which other people may term it as land clashes. And that is why in 1992 and people believe that by the Kikuyu people have just come to take their land. And it is easy to use a language that politicians use to make sure that people use that advantage to fight the Kikuyu. Therefore, it is not clear about what Sang is meaning by saying not someone just coming and settling in someone else's place. If also taken in that perspective, people might understand to mean that the Kikuyu have just come to take their place. But he continues to talk about willing seller and willing buyer. This is when the exchange of money is being done. Not and before that, it's not just there was exchange of it's just coming and settling without buying and without in someone else's place. So in Rift Valley, it is believed to be the Kalenjin believe that it is theirs. It is theirs for it is something which is theirs, not for anyone else. Anyone else who comes in, not unless they have bought. But if not, you are not part of that.
And so, Mr. Witness, all you want the court to take note of is that to you, what Mr. Sang is saying in this part of saying willing buyer, willing seller is not clear. All you want is that the point that it is not clear be flagged, isn't it?
Yes. To me, if I look at it critically and put in mind what was happening at that particular time back in Eldoret and parts of Rift Valley, I will look at this differently.
Okay, if you could just answer my question very specifically. From the same audio, you recall that Mr. Sang said that Kenya is big enough for all the 42 tribes. You remember he said that in this audio, isn't it?
Yes.
He also said that everybody in Kenya is entitled to settle wherever he is, isn't it?
Yes.
And lastly, he also said that wherever somebody has bought land is entitled to settle there, isn't it?
Yes.
Mr. President, at this point, I pray to have this audio and the translation produced as an exhibit in Mr. Sang's defense. The audio is Ken-D11-0013-0029, and the translation is Ken-D11-0019-0252. Mr. President, I rely on the fact that the witness recognizes that this is the general nature of the peace messages that Mr. Sang conveyed. Mr. President, the audio itself was notified to the prosecution through an affidavit sworn by Mr. Lamaon on the 8th of January 2014, Mr. Lamaon being the chief executive of KAS-FM from where the audio was sourced. And it is item number 2 in Mr. Lamaon's affidavit. And that affidavit was meant to authenticate the audio. Mr. President, it is very directly relevant to the issue being considered by the chamber. The affidavit itself is Ken-D11-0013-0072. Mr. President, I pray that that audio and the translation be admitted as an exhibit.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honours, the prosecution maintains its objection to the admission of this sort of evidence, particularly based on an untested affidavit of Mr. Lamaon at this stage. the witness himself has not identified the affidavit, the recordings. He hasn't heard the specific recording. And in my respectful submission, the authenticity of this needs to be established during the course of the defense case. I have no objection to it being marked MFI.
We have absolutely no objection, Your Honor, and we support the application.
Mr. President, just allow me to say something before you make a decision. Mr. President, may I make the observation that notice of the existence of this audio was given to the prosecution as early as 8th January 2014, and we submit that the prosecution have had enough time to investigate and establish the authenticity and the genuinity of this audio. And if their only concern is whether or not it is genuine, Mr. President, we submit that they have had adequate time. Mr. President, on the issue that the witness has not confirmed this specific audio, we submit, Mr. President, that this witness was brought to adduce evidence to the effect that Mr. Sang was inciting. This audio itself answers that question very directly, even if it is not exactly the audio that the witness listened to. The witness himself has said that he wasn't listening to the program every single day, and he admits that the general content and substance of this audio reflects generally what Mr. Sang used to broadcast. For all those reasons, Mr. President, we submit that the audio and the translation meet the threshold and the criteria within which they can be admitted, and we pray for the exercise of your discretion to admit it as an exhibit.
I beg your pardon, Your Honours. May I just respond very briefly? I can see Your Honours is about to render a ruling, but I would just like to place on record, firstly, that it's not the prosecution's job to authenticate material that the defence want to hand in. But be that as it may, we've been trying for almost 6 months now to have access to this material in consultation with Mr. Lamo and with the knowledge of my learned friend, unsuccessfully to date. So for my learned friend to say that we've not authenticated the material, it's a bit rich.
Noted. It is also noted that the witness's testimony as regards the material, in considering it, we will of course also take into account his views on, as it relates to paragraph 3 at page 3 of the translation, where he discusses how certain references could have a different effect in the context at the time. The document will be admitted as the next in the Sang defense exhibits.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. President, the audio excerpt KEN-D11-0013-0029 public item will be attributed reference EVDT D11-00059. The transcript of that audio excerpt will be attributed reference EVDT D11-00060. It's a public item, and the reference of the transcript is KEN D11-0019-0252. Public item.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Witness, I want to go to something different.
I beg your pardon, Your Honour. I'm sorry to interrupt my learned friends, but I note the time. My learned friend said he would be finished by the lunch break. We have 45 minutes left. Could he perhaps give an indication of how much longer he intends to be?
Indeed. Mr. Kiginkatwa?
Mr. President, may I try 10 minutes, please?
10 more minutes.
Now, Mr. Witness, you recall that you said the name of person number 6 and his friend was mentioned by Mr. Sang in a certain situation culminating. Do you recall that, Mr. Witness?
Yes.
Mr. President, so that I can move fast, I think I have no choice but to go to a private session. I should be there for about 4 or 5 minutes.
Private session.
We are in open session, Mr. President.
Thank you. It's Mr. Steinberg, just an indication, do you have an idea how much time you'll need?
Your Honours, I would imagine 45 minutes. We've already passed that mark.
You had indicated before between 30 and 60 minutes.
Indeed, I'm splitting the difference, Your Honour.
Mr. Kiginkatwa,
Let me do only this audio, Mr. President.
how long will that take?
It's a 3-minute audio, Mr. President.
All right.
Uchamege kotab kwalenjin ngwito kilomite betut habrani. Ameje kitugostoi kap kwalenjin amwo ngoliotab kalyet ninoto kurire emetab Kenya kalyet, rire chitugul kalyet, rire lakwet nemingin kalyet, rire chito neo kalyet, rire chepyoso kalyet, rire boyo kalyet, rire agui kalyet anabatiem, rire chitugul kalyet. Konyo bokolenjin yebichi akobejeit mising kalyet kumomi kiy nesirei. Kalyet kumokyingei chitugul. Kalyet kokochin biik kwai boisionikwak. Kalyet kokochin chito kwai kit nemoche. Kalyet kokochin biik komeng'is eng tupchondit. Kalyet kuribe biik moro.
Where are we dealing with this, Mr. Kiginkatwa?
Let me put a question to the witness. Witness, you recognize the force, isn't it?
I know it doesn't matter, but I'm saying, why are we doing this? Yes, we see peace, peace, peace all over the transcript. And the witness has testified that there were times when Mr. Sang would broadcast messages of peace and other times not. Are you now putting him through one of those instances?
Yes,
where
Mr.
he might? Why do you need to do that?
Mr. Witness, do you recall hearing Mr. Sang make this broadcast for peace?
Yes, I've stated that at times I could hear him talk of messages of peace, and I said that I longed that he could have maintained like that without getting to incitement, and that was my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. But my question is, did you hear this particular peace message, Mr. Witness?
Yes, I remember hearing peace message, and it's like this.
Mr. President, in that case, then I will pray to produce it as an exhibit and arrest my issue there. Mr. President, the audio itself is Ken D11-0011-0044, and the transcript and translation is Ken D11-0011-0045.
Any objection?
Your Honour, it's not in this instance.
No objections, Your Honor.
Documents will be admitted as the next in the Sang defense exhibit.
Yes, Mr. President. The documents as referred to by Council will be attributed respectively EVDT D11-00061, public item, that's the audio excerpt, and EVDT D11-00062, transcript, public item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I don't know whether you'd allow me 2 or 3 minutes, Mr. President. There was the audio that you had raised an issue about as to whether it was played in the program CAS FM, the song that we played an audio. I have it within the content of the Mr. Sang's program, and I was very anxious to play it so that it is clear that that is exactly the same audio. It is not exactly 11 minutes like the other one. This one is 4 minutes. I just wanted to situate it in the course of the program and that it is exactly the same. And probably I should flag this, Mr. President, that it was played since the year 2005. And much as consciousness of existence of Ebola is recent, it actually was there in the year 2005. And that audio was played as it is, Mr. President. There is absolutely nothing added.
Your Honours, with respect, if the one audio is 11 minutes and the other is only 4 minutes, clearly they're not exactly the same. My suggestion is that my learned friend should transcribe that portion and provide the court with an accurate transcript so that we can then compare the two. It's not necessary that this witness is present for that exercise.
Yes, indeed. That was going to be my ruling on the matter. So let's leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I just mention this, Mr. President, that it is in the nature of radio broadcast that you can't play a whole song of 11 minutes in the course of broadcast. And so if it was played 4 minutes, it's not because of any mischief.
We can argue about that.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
We can argue about that.
And thank you very much, Mr. Witness, for answering my questions.
Mr. Steinberg, witness, we have finished Mr. Sang's lawyer's cross-examination of you, and the prosecutor would have some more questions and re-examination from matters arising from the questions of the defense counsel.
Thank you, Your Honours. If time permits, I might like to refer to another portion of the transcript of the audio, the transcript of which appears at tab 16 of the Sang Defence Bundle. Unfortunately, since we have neither a Kalenjin transcript nor any timestamps on the English translation, it's impossible for me to find the relevant portion. So I'm going to request the assistance of my learned friend to provide us with the timestamp of Ken 0019, sorry, Ken D11 00190252, page 7 of that, which is 0259, from the second, the third paragraph starting with Sang, which starts, Mzalendo has raised a very important and truthful issue. And if I could ask that they could do that in the meantime, and I'll continue with other matters. Thank you. I believe I can start.
What tab did you say it is at?
Tab 16 of the Sang Defence Bundle, Your Honours. Thank you. Mr. Witness, we can start off in public session, but I just caution you again to be careful not to mention any identifying information and to use the protected information sheet if necessary. It was suggested to you on more than one occasion by my learned friend for the Ruto defense that your motive for becoming an ICC witness was in order to get money and benefits from the ICC. Do you recall that?
Yes, I recall.
Did you, in fact, make money from the ICC?
No.
Did you enjoy a luxurious lifestyle while under the care of the ICC?
Your Honour, in fact, that was not the tone of my questions or the context of it, Your Honour. It was monies and everything that he received
We can argue
under the
about
guise of a witness protection program.
Ms.
and-
Alexandra, let's not do that. You
Sure.
can make submissions.
But the questions are not arising out of cross-examination.
It's the way the questions were asked.
Indeed, Your Honor.
Overruled, overruled.
What did you receive in return for providing information regarding witness interference, if anything?
Nothing.
What did you receive in return for taking part in the operations? I won't give any more detail than that, but taking part in the operations that the investigators requested you to take part in, if anything.
Nothing.
And for that matter, what did you receive in return for introducing other witnesses to the OTP, if anything?
Nothing.
Thank you. Your Honours, I'm afraid the next matter I'm going to have to request to go into private session, probably for about 10 minutes.
Private session.
We are in open session, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honour. Mr. Witness, you were asked by my learned friend about something recorded in your screening note where investigators recorded you as saying that you had monitored CAS FM, I think it was during 2005 and 2007. But what I'm interested in is the word monitored. What did you mean by that? Well, firstly, did you use that word, monitored?
I don't remember if I used that word, but what I meant was that I listened to KAS FM and even got information from other people on issues that were discussed if I did not listen to.
Mr. Steinberg, 1 second, please. We hope the court staff would bear with us. We know that people had made their own arrangements. But Mrs. Steinberg, you'll have to wrap this thing up in 10 minutes.
Your Honours, I will be less than that. Thank
Good.
you.
That's good to know.
Sorry, you were finishing. What did you mean by... Oh, you did answer that question. My next question was, and when you were listening to KAS FM in this manner, was this part of one of your jobs, not mentioning those particular jobs, or was this something you were doing in your private capacity?
I was doing in my private capacity.
All right. Now, I'd like to go to two portions of one of the transcripts that was put to you by my learned friend for Mr. Sang. And perhaps we can firstly see if we can do it without the audio. Perhaps I can inquire whether my learned friends found the timestamp for me.
May I indicate, Mr. President, that I very much regret I would have to be outside court to get a timestamp because I have to manually do it using a laptop, Mr. President, and so I'm not in a position to get the timestamp right here in court. May I also indicate that the timestamp that my learned colleague is asking for is not one of the timestamps we played, so I didn't anticipate that, and so I am completely unable to give him the timestamp, much as I would very much have wished to.
Your Honours, I'll see if I can do without it, but I would kindly request in future that either we be given a timestamp version or at least a transcript so that we can follow on the Kalenjin. It's easier for us then to identify a particular portion. But can I ask the court officer to call up Ken D11 0019 0252 at 0259. And if you could zoom in, please, on the middle paragraph on that page, starting with the word sang.
Mr. President, I would object to that. If my learned friend wants to make reference to that paragraph, which I've looked at, I would pray that he situates it by making reference to the earlier call starting from the last part of the previous page number 258, so that the context of what he wants to zoom in is appreciated, Mr. President. I would have
But the material is already part of the exhibit, isn't it?
It is, and in fact, Mr. President, I thought you said a while ago, in view of the fact that these documents are part of the exhibits, the point I'm making, Mr. President, is I object to the selective way of picking a statement or part of the conversation.
That is the essence of what the prosecution is saying you've done. He's saying you've been selective. He hasn't said that, but going to another part of the transcript, that's the point. Objection overruled. Mr. Steinberg.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was indeed about to place it in context without going through the entire page. But this paragraph, Mr. Witness, Mr. Sang is responding to a caller who goes by the name of Mzalendo. Firstly, is Mzalendo, is that a Kalenjin name that you know?
No.
What does that mean?
Well, you are the one who asked him a double-barreled question.
Mzalendo in Kiswahili means a patriot.
A patriot. So, from your understanding, is that the person's real name, or is the person using perhaps a pseudonym?
It's not a real name.
Before we get to the contents, is this the first time you've heard a caller on Mr. Sang's show using a pseudonym?
No.
Can you recall any other pseudonyms that persons phoning in have used?
Yes.
Can you give some examples, please?
Mr. President, I'm just wondering if this is an issue that arose from the cross-examination. I submit, Mr. President, that it doesn't arise, and it's not fair to go this direction, because then Mr. Sang will not have an opportunity to respond.
But you can make submissions.
Yes. Your Honours, it actually arises from something contained in this transcript, which was only disclosed to us yesterday, I might add. Can you answer that? Can you recall any other pseudonyms that you remember being used?
Iptindinho.
What does that mean?
If I say that to a Kalenjin, will understand that this is a bad person who may be like a rapist, like that is indication of a bad person.
Mr. President, may I very strongly object, Mr. President? That is very adverse, Mr. President, and we do not have an opportunity to consider that. We do not agree that is the meaning. And the mere fact that we have an opportunity to respond by way of submissions, we submit is not license for my colleague to go outside what was raised in cross-examination. I understand the latitude that the court may have given to him to probably call out the other names, but not to go as far as that, Mr. President. It introduces very adverse comments and to the prejudice of Mr. Sir.
Your Honour, let me go straight to the point then, because this arises directly from the material used in cross-examination. And may I refer, if you just turn over one page to Ken D11 0019 0262, halfway down the page, indeed we see a caller who states, "This is Kiptindinho." Can I just spell that for the record? KIPTINDINYO. Is that the name, Mr. Witness, that you just said? Is that
Yes.
Your Honor, I raise this because the tenor of my learned friend's cross-examination today, as I understood it, was that this witness was not a listener to CAS FM, and indeed this is a name he has recognized, and I see it, lo and behold, in the transcript which my learned friend produced today in cross-examination.
And which, for the record, Mr. President, was given to the witness and could have been seen by the witness from the transcript.
Noted. Now,
Your Honours, if I may on that, I refer my learned friend to the witness preparation schedule which was provided to the defence prior to the beginning of this, of the witness's evidence, at which he specifically mentions this name. So this is not something which he could have tailored in respect to this evidence. And I can refer my learned friends to the, it's actually contained in the defence bundle.
all right, Mr. Steinbach, we've noted the point. Now, what's your question to the witness?
Very well. Going back to the paragraph in front of you, sorry, if we can go back to the previous page, 0259, in the middle of the page. What I'm interested in your explanation of, please, is this paragraph where Mr. Sang says, Mzalendo has raised a very important and truthful issue because Kalenjin people are accommodative, and that is why our homelands have been inhabited by all communities, and you do not find people leaving, L-E-A-V-I-N-G, I believe it should be living this way in other areas, thus affirming the fact that our people are people who are receptive to all. And that is why I believe it is important that we uphold unity, and this is the portion I'm interested in, but that does not mean you leave the house wide open. What do you understand by that phrase, Mr. Witness? That does not mean that you leave the house wide open?
That we should not always be so loose to welcome other people in our locality.
Thank you, Your Honours. No further questions.
We will have to leave it there. And witness, thank you for coming. We know it has been long sessions for you. To thank you for coming and answering the questions asked of you. And we thank the court staff for staying late to accommodate us. Thank you for coming again, witness, and you are released from your obligations as a witness in this case. The court would adjourn, but we'll do that. We'll go into closed session to usher the witness out of the room.